Hello everyone and welcome back to this Football Manager experiment where we take a look at what would happen if you swap the top leagues with the bottom leagues. Now we've done I think 7 parts of this experiment already. This is going to be the final part, and as you can see we're currently in the year 2031. We have gone forward quite a long period in time, and that is why the Premier League table looks pretty much the same as it did before. It's only really the bottom half and middle that's that different. All of the big teams are back up in there except for Liverpool, who've just been relegated in the final year. But there are still some non-league teams in there like Ebbsfleet, Eastbourne Borough, Whitehawk. They're all still in there. Barnsley doing very well out of all of this, as are Sheffield Wednesday. Aston Villa also up there as well, but the main beneficiaries of this entire thing have been Newcastle, who've won the league several times now. So we're going to jump forward, I think, just 20-ish years, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. I'm just going to let the game run for a while, and we'll take a look at how the league is shaping up in the long term, because I don't think it's that interesting to go 5 more years ahead. I think we need to go a longer chunk than that and see if the football pyramid has rebalanced itself. So if you want to know what happened last time out, go and check the last episode. I'm not going to do a big review of it. We're just going to jump forward now and see where things are at. Well, we're now in the year 2049, and as we can see, Manchester United are the Premier League champions this year. They finished above Manchester City, Chelsea in 3rd, Reading in 4th, but also qualifying for the Champions League. So a sign there that the Premier League has retained its position with 4 Champions League spaces. Huddersfield actually finishing in 6th, Newcastle down in 6th, and Arsenal down in 7th. Liverpool getting relegated, West Ham and Southampton also getting relegated. Spurs down in 17th place as well. They are still not the force they once were. So it looks like it's only really United, City, Chelsea and Arsenal that have actually managed to rebuild their clubs properly, and even Arsenal aren't back up in the top 4 on a regular basis. It's only really the 2 Manchester clubs and I guess Chelsea who've managed to do the real rebuilding job that was required and return themselves to the summit of the Premier League. And it's great to see that a club like Eastbourne Borough are still there in 8th place. They are now a rich club. They've got a nice history in the Premier League after bouncing in and out of the Championship for quite a long time. They've now got several higher position finishes. Also in there from the non-league are Whitehawk, but I think that is it. There's only 2 non-league teams still in the Premier League. Whitehawk never been relegated as far as I can remember. Finished up in 5th, 15th, lots of sort of mid-table finishes, and they had a few good years in the top half before dropping down again. It does look like they're on a decline and that they will eventually fall out. But for now, they're looking very, very good. If we look at their facilities, £358 million estimated value. Only 247 season ticket holders, though. It doesn't look like they've ever built a new stadium, which is a bit ridiculous. Just a 12,586-seater stadium. But good facilities, at least. Otherwise, a bit of an average club, which is why they would undoubtedly be struggling in the Premier League if they do not have the facilities to compete. But otherwise, the only real surprise are Spurs and Liverpool getting relegated right down there towards the bottom. Spurs not getting relegated, but very close to it. Now, if we just drop back a few years, have a look at what the theme of this has all been. As you can see, Arsenal still down in 6th there, but City winning the league as they do so often. Chelsea in 2nd, United in 3rd, the same top 3. Newcastle all the way down in 9th. And Chelmsford and Bishop Stortford both got relegated. Before that, again, City, United, Chelsea, Blackburn and Arsenal still up there as well. Newcastle again in 9th. That's the same sort of league table at the top as the year before. Now if we go back again, still all at the top there. Blackburn in 4th, Newcastle 9th. Ebbsfleet and Forest getting relegated alongside Bournemouth. Spurs still down there. No Liverpool in the Premier League. The year before that, still no Liverpool in the Premier League, but City and Chelsea at the top. Arsenal finishing in 3rd place. Newcastle falling all the way down to 14th after winning the league so many times. Before that, again, it's the same 3 at the top. This really is getting to sort of where the new Premier League is at this point. If we just quickly go through them, Liverpool really are a yo-yoing team in and out of the Premier League, just like West Ham, who've been doing it for decades at this point. Spurs in 10th, but eventually they did fall away. Newcastle in 7th. They did finish 5th the year before that, Newcastle, but again, it's the same top 3 year in, year out. And all this experiment has really done is given a couple of non-league teams a place in the Premier League and established City, United and Chelsea as a 3-horse title race every year. So the league is probably less competitive than it's ever been as a result of these changes. I mean, this year, both United and City finishing 20 points above Arsenal. Chelsea all the way down in 6th, Newcastle in 4th. But it's the same teams year after year after year winning the Premier League. It just doesn't change. Then you had that one year when Newcastle did manage to do it 20-odd years ago. But if we have a look at the past winners, you can see it. Manchester City, the huge beneficiaries of all this. You had Oxford were the first to win it. Then Newcastle got it 5 years in a row. City getting it 4. Then Newcastle got another one. Then City won it. 6 years in a row, is that? 7 years in a row. Then Newcastle managed to break the dominance again, so they've managed to benefit to the tune of 7 league titles. Then City had another run of 5 in a row. 1 for United, 2 for City, 1 for United, 4 for City, 1 for United again. Chelsea never actually winning the Premier League, so it's only really City and United who've got the dominance now. It's rare that Chelsea even gets second. Let's just have a quick look at Manchester City, their manager Matthew Gibson-Crawford. We're not going to recognise any of these players, but they're doing very, very well. That's a nice little sort of record there. If we look at their general information, £2 billion valuation, they've completely rebuilt, 65,000 season ticket holders. Their stadium must be pretty big right now if you look at the facilities, 85,000 seater stadium. So they really are the dominant force in English football now, completely unchallenged other than United sort of trying to keep pace with them, but they've taken longer to catch up because they were down in the low leagues for a lot longer than Manchester United were. Newcastle just sort of lost it. They had that opportunity to do very well, but they've only had one top 3 finish in the last decade, and it was a decade ago that they finished in the top 3. So their little run there, when they weren't buying enough players, given that they were winning the league and getting the TV money year after year, they were not buying the players they needed to remain competitive. And eventually, in the 20s going into the 30s, they did start to fall away, making just one appearance in the top 10 and in the top 3 in 20 years. Now let's drop down to the Championship. I'm not going to spend too much on this. I think this is probably the best way to look at it. And if we go down to sort of where we left off, which was about 34, I think, and you can see the teams getting up and going down quite often are the same. Liverpool are one of those yo-yo clubs. Eastbourne Borough appearing an awful lot as well. Barnsley are in there quite a bit, considering they've actually finished in the top 4. Quite surprising they're yo-yo in between. West Ham obviously have been doing it for a long time. They always seem to win the Championship. Although not as much as Barnsley. Nottingham Forest in there a couple of times. There's not an awful lot to take a look at here. I think if we just drop down to the League One, still a few Premier League teams down here. Let's have a look at the table, actually. That might be more interesting. And if we drop back a year, we'll see QPR did win it in the final season. Everton's still down in League One. Oxford City, the former Premier League champions, down there. Sunderland in there as well, still in League One. They have managed to finally get up because they were really struggling in non-league football for a long time, but they are going to be in the Championship now. Other teams down there, a lot of non-league teams in this league. Stoke in there as well. Let's just pop up to the Championship and just have a look at this table as well. And as you can see, Liverpool in there as well. Watford in there. Sunderland were in there last season. They're in there this season. Sorry, last season it was the likes of Cardiff, Bath and Swansea going down. But yeah, I think this is all very similar to what we've seen before ultimately. And if we have a look at League 2, just see who's down here. Any Premier League teams in League 2? Not that I can see. It looks like there's a few non-league teams in here, so it has changed around quite a bit. A few former Premier League non-league teams, I mean. The likes of Hungerford, Truro, St Albans all in there when they probably wouldn't have been ordinarily. Gosport in there as well. AFC Wimbledon getting relegated. If we drop down to the National League and have a look at last season, again, no major surprise in here. Poole are in there. They were one of the non-league teams that we did promote up. So were Boreham Wood. So a few of the non-league teams have become non-league teams again, but there are no Premier League teams down in this section of the Football League. They are all now up in League 1 and above. So the game really has managed to fix the problem it was having. Now in the North, I'm just going to look to see if Middlesbrough ever got out of the league. because I don't think there's any Premier League teams down here. It's just Middlesbrough who would be, and it might be easier if we just search for them. They are still in the regional Premier Division. They got relegated in 16-17. They've been out of this league now for 30 odd years, never going to return from the luck of it. They just are where they are. If we look at their general information, £21 million, still a lot of money in that club. £3 season ticket, £75 average, and still the 12,000 season ticket holders. They've still got good corporate facilities, poor training facilities, basic youth facilities. So really, they are the big hit. The former Premier League team just getting completely flushed out of the entire game and now languishing somewhere in the abyss of the Football Manager engine. So what we'll do now is just have a quick look at the Champions League and see if we have any winners from English football, and you can see there are quite a few. Let's have a look at the past winners screen. I think when we left off, Manchester City had only just won the Champions League, I think, or maybe they hadn't even won the Champions League at that point. But we can see that after so long of no English teams in the final, there has been an absolute flood. City, Arsenal and City. No one in 34-35, but then City. 4 years in a row they won the competition, beating Chelsea in another All-English final, beating United in a Manchester final, City in that final again, then winning it, then losing twice to United in the Champions League and losing to Barcelona again, Chelsea in there with PSG, City in there again and again. They really have got a lot of final appearances, City. They are without doubt the biggest club in the world now. 8 Champions League titles to their name, 6 runners-up, all since we relegated them into non-league. That is how quickly they have bounced back to a real force. 26 league titles in there now, 16 FA Cups. They really are just the biggest club in world football, and it shows that there are things in the game that just will not stop. Even getting relegated to non-league will not stop Manchester City becoming the force in this game. But it's great to see that a lot of other English teams are in there as well. United, Chelsea and Arsenal all making appearances on a regular basis in the final. So certainly something nice in that the league has rebuilt itself to the point that it has. If we take a look at the Europa League, Reading have won it, Huddersfield have won it, Reading have won it again. And another final appearances. Reading loved this competition, it would seem. Other English clubs in there, Newcastle managed to win a European trophy for the first time as well. I don't think they'd ever done that before. City were the only other team to have won it. Spurs were winners as well, but you can see the English teams really starting to dominate. The last 2 finals were an all-English final. It may as well have been the FA Cup. Reading and Blackburn in the Europa League final. Arsenal beating Huddersfield in the Europa League final. Huddersfield did also win it again against Spurs in an all-English final. Reading losing to Barcelona in the Europa League final, quite funny that one, and beating Juventus, to be fair, in the final as well. Norwich winning it in there. Any other English teams making the final? Norwich won in the final before that as well. Sheffield Wednesday were in there, Spurs won it. And Newcastle beat Spurs in that final as well. Again, Spurs won it. But it looks like there's definitely 2 tiers to the Premier League now. And you've got the teams constantly challenging at the Europa League and the teams constantly challenging at the Champions League. But it's great that the league is so strong that there's sort of 7 teams constantly winning European competitions now, which is not something you see in the game ordinarily. And it must mean that the Premier League has got to be the highest ranked league now. And there you can see, after falling down to 5th in the rankings a few years ago, it hasn't just returned to the middle. It is now by far and away the biggest league. And I don't think that ordinarily happens in this game if you just run it forward. I think it always stays around 3rd with at least, or 2nd, sorry, with the Spanish league at the top, and it's very rare that it actually dislodges Spain as the top league. So something about the reversal that we made has allowed lots of teams to have a run at European competitions and build up a bit of experience, a bit of finance and revenue to be able to keep challenging. And the Premier League really has just returned as the dominant force in world football. But I think that is probably going to be it. We might just take a quick look at the transfers, see if there's any major ones in there. You can see the transfers are getting a little bit high. 70 odd million, 100 million the highest, 80, 170 million, 90 million, 80 million. the money is kind of where you would expect it to be in the Premier League at this point. There's not much point looking at the regens, I don't think. I think that's kind of going to be where it is. And I think that's probably just going to be it for this experiment. There's not going to be any more parts to it, I'm afraid. But there will be a new experiment up in a couple of days' time. So drop a like on this video if you've enjoyed this rather long experiment. It was a lot longer than I thought it'd be. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see what the next one is. Let me know in the comments if you've got ideas for experiments. I usually get my ideas from you guys because I'm not that creative. So do let me know what you'd like me to do next. But until next time, see ya.